The training room was tense, eyes fixed on the unfolding scenario. Then a single name flashed across the top of the screen, hers. And in that instant, the recruits realized the woman in the back row wasn't here to observe, she was here to lead. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story intrigues you, subscribe for more untold tales of those who serve in ways we never see. The morning sun sliced through the reinforced windows of Fort Carson's Advanced Marksmanship Training Center, casting long shadows across rows of wooden benches where 30 elite snipers sat in rigid formation. The sterile fluorescent lighting mixed with natural sunlight created harsh contrasts that emphasized the serious expressions of personnel who had been selected from across all military branches for the most challenging precision shooting program in the armed forces. Colonel James Hartwell stood at the front of the classroom, his imposing frame draped in a uniform that displayed decades of marksmanship badges, expert ratings, and combat decorations. His weathered face bore the distinctive marks of someone who had spent years behind rifle scopes in hostile environments, and his reputation as the military's most unforgiving sniper instructor was legendary throughout special operations communities. "Gentlemen," Hartwell announced, his voice carrying the granite authority of someone who had never encountered a shooting challenge he couldn't master. "Today we separate the marksmen from the pretenders." His cold gray eyes scanned the assembled trainees with obvious skepticism. Every shooter thinks they're special until they face impossible standards under pressure that would break ordinary soldiers. He gestured toward a series of steel targets visible through the range windows, positioned at distances that stretched the limits of human capability and equipment performance. The furthest targets were barely visible even with high-powered optics, shimmering in heat distortion at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. "Physics doesn't care about your ego or your training records," Hartwell continued with growing intensity. "The laws of ballistics are absolute, and they will humble anyone who thinks they can bend reality through willpower or luck." The trainees listened with obvious tension, all except for Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, who sat motionless in the back row, her expression unreadable behind regulation shooting glasses. Her dark hair was pulled back in a precise military bun, and unlike the others who leaned forward with obvious anxiety, she maintained perfect stillness, observing the instruction with the detached professionalism of someone evaluating procedures rather than learning them for the first time. Where other students wore pristine uniforms and carried standard-issue equipment, Elena's gear showed subtle modifications and wear patterns that suggested extensive field use under demanding conditions. Her rifle case bore faded markings from previous assignments, and her shooting accessories displayed the kind of meticulous maintenance that characterized personnel with extensive combat experience. Hartwell began reviewing the qualification standards that had eliminated more candidates than any other military training program, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who took pride in maintaining impossibly high standards that few could achieve. "The minimum qualification score is 95% accuracy at all ranges under all conditions," he explained with obvious pleasure in the difficulty he was describing. "Weather, time pressure, equipment failures, physical exhaustion. None of these factors will be considered as excuses for substandard performance." Elena raised her hand slightly from her position in the back row, her voice quiet, but carrying an undertone of analytical precision that most personnel either overlooked entirely or dismissed as theoretical questioning unsuited to practical military training. "Colonel, the environmental conditions for today's qualifications include crosswinds exceeding 15 knots and temperature variations that will affect ballistic calculations significantly. Are the scoring standards adjusted for these atmospheric factors?" Hartwell looked at her with barely concealed irritation, his expression suggesting annoyance at having his presentation interrupted by theoretical concerns from someone whose shooting experience was presumably limited to basic marksmanship requirements rather than advanced precision techniques. "Sergeant, real combat doesn't provide adjusted scoring standards for weather conditions. If you can't adapt to environmental factors, you don't belong in this program." His tone carried the dismissive authority of someone who had never encountered shooting challenges that exceeded his capabilities. Elena nodded once and returned to her note-taking, but her pen continued moving across pages filled with ballistic calculations, wind compensation formulas, and range estimation techniques that demonstrated understanding of precision shooting far beyond basic military requirements. From the observation tower overlooking the training facility, Captain Marcus Webb watched the proceedings through high-powered binoculars, his attention focused specifically on Elena's position among the assembled candidates. His hand moved instinctively to the secure communication device attached to his equipment belt, and he stepped away from the other observers. "Sir, she's here," he said quietly into the encrypted phone. "Master Sergeant Rodriguez, in the advanced sniper program." The voice on the other end responded with a series of questions, and Webb glanced back toward the classroom, where Elena continued documenting training procedures with methodical precision. "Yes, sir." Confirmed identity. "She's using her actual service record, not the cover identity from the previous assignment." "What are your instructions?" After the morning briefing concluded and trainees dispersed to their individual preparation areas, Elena remained in the classroom, ostensibly to review course materials, but actually to continue her private assessment of training procedures and facility capabilities that she had been analyzing since her arrival at Fort Carson 3 days earlier. Staff Sergeant Miguel Torres, one of the younger candidates who had been selected from Marine Corps reconnaissance units, approached with obvious curiosity about Elena's extensive documentation habits and apparent familiarity with advanced shooting techniques that seemed to exceed standard military training. "Sergeant Rodriguez, why do you spend so much time reviewing those ballistics manuals? Most of the other candidates are focusing on equipment preparation and physical conditioning rather than theoretical study." Elena's response reflected the careful balance she maintained between sharing tactical knowledge and avoiding attention that might compromise the cover story that had allowed her to enter the training program without revealing her actual background and qualifications. "Knowledge saves lives, Torres. The more you understand about how ballistics actually work under different conditions, the better equipped you are to make shots that others would consider impossible. But you're coming from logistics support, not field operations," Torres pointed out with the logic of someone who understood military assignments in terms of clear specialization rather than cross-functional capabilities that might transcend official job descriptions. Elena looked up from the technical manuals she was allegedly studying, her eyes reflecting depths of experience that seemed inconsistent with her official personnel record and current assignment to the training program. "In special operations, Torres, everyone eventually becomes a precision shooter. Understanding advanced ballistics isn't optional. It's essential for mission success and team survival." The conversation was interrupted when the facility's alert system activated with urgent electronic tones that instantly transformed the routine training day into a high-priority demonstration requiring immediate attention from all available personnel. The base commander's voice carried across every building within the secure training compound. "All personnel, demonstration exercise commencing. Report to primary observation positions for live fire qualification assessment." This is a mandatory training event. Elena was moving toward the rifle range before the announcement finished, her study materials forgotten as years of suppressed muscle memory and tactical instincts emerged with immediate readiness. Torres watched her transformation from quiet academic to focused professional operator, the change dramatic enough to be clearly visible even to someone with limited exposure to elite military personnel. "What's happening, Sergeant?" Torres asked, his voice reflecting uncertainty about procedures that hadn't been covered in the standard program orientation. Elena was already moving toward the equipment storage area with purposeful efficiency that suggested extensive familiarity with high-pressure training scenarios, her administrative demeanor completely replaced by something much more tactically oriented and professionally competent. "Live fire assessment under observation conditions. This isn't standard qualification. This is evaluation for advanced placement or program elimination based on demonstrated capability under pressure." Within 15 minutes, the training facility's primary observation deck was filled with instructors, senior NCOs, and visiting officers who had assembled to witness qualification shooting that would determine which candidates continued in the program and which were eliminated for insufficient capability. Colonel Hartwell positioned himself at the primary observation point, surrounded by range safety officers and scoring personnel who would document every aspect of the qualification exercise. His confidence was obvious as he prepared to demonstrate why his training standards eliminated more candidates than any comparable program in the military. Today's exercise will separate those who belong here from those who were incorrectly selected, Hartwell announced to the assembled observers, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never witnessed shooting performance that exceeded his own capabilities. We will discover which candidates possessed genuine precision shooting ability and which were advanced based on administrative errors or inflated training records. Elena took her assigned position at firing point 7, the furthest position from the observation deck, and the most challenging location due to crosswind effects and ground-level heat distortion that would complicate range estimation and ballistic calculations. As she unpacked her equipment, several observers noted the worn condition of her gear and the obvious modifications that suggested extensive field use rather than standard-issue equipment. Master Sergeant Patricia Hayes, the facility's senior instructor, approached Elena's position with obvious skepticism about the non-standard equipment and unconventional shooting accessories that didn't match regulation specifications. Sergeant Rodriguez, your equipment doesn't conform to standard issue specifications. Are you certain this gear meets program requirements for qualification exercises? Elena's response was professional but firm, her tone suggesting confidence in equipment selection based on extensive practical experience rather than theoretical compliance with administrative regulations. Master Sergeant, this equipment exceeds all performance specifications required by program standards. I can provide technical documentation for every component if required for official approval. Hayes studied the custom rifle system and specialized accessories with growing interest, recognizing quality and capability that suggested professional-level shooting rather than standard military marksmanship. Where did you acquire equipment of this caliber, Sergeant? Elena's carefully maintained cover story began showing stress under the pressure of technical questioning that required honest assessment of her background rather than continued pretense about her qualifications and experience. Previous assignments required specialized equipment, Master Sergeant. I maintained ownership through proper channels when I transferred to current duties. Before Hayes could pursue additional questions, the range communication system activated with instructions for the commencement of qualification firing, requiring immediate attention from all participants and observers. All shooters, commence qualification sequence. Targets at 800, 1200, 1600, and 2000 meters. 5 rounds each distance. Weather conditions are variable. No coaching or assistance permitted. The first group of candidates began their qualification attempts, each managing respectable performance at shorter ranges, but demonstrating increasing difficulty as distances extended beyond 1,500 meters. Hartwell's commentary grew more critical with each missed shot, his satisfaction obvious as candidates failed to meet the impossibly high standards he had established. This is why we maintain rigorous selection criteria, he announced to the observers as another candidate failed to achieve qualifying scores. Precision shooting under adverse conditions requires capabilities that most personnel simply don't possess, regardless of their previous training or claimed experience. Elena's turn arrived as the afternoon shadows began affecting visibility and wind conditions had increased to levels that made accurate shooting extremely challenging even for experienced snipers. Her approach to the firing line was methodical and professional, demonstrating preparation rituals that suggested extensive combat experience rather than training exercise familiarity. As she settled into shooting position, Elena entered the focused mental state that had carried her through countless high-pressure scenarios in hostile environments. Her breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm that optimized physical stability while maintaining mental clarity. For seconds in, pause. For seconds out, pause. Maintaining the cycle that synchronized cardiovascular function with trigger control. Through her rifle scope, Elena assessed the complex environmental factors that would affect bullet trajectory over the extreme distances required for qualification. Wind speed and direction at multiple elevations, atmospheric pressure variations, temperature gradients, humidity effects on powder combustion, and the subtle movement of targets from thermal expansion as afternoon temperatures peaked. Her first shot at 800 meters struck the target's center ring with precision that drew immediate attention from the observation deck. The second, third, fourth, and fifth shots followed with mechanical consistency, each impact precisely placed despite environmental conditions that had challenged every previous candidate. Impossible, Hartwell muttered, his confidence beginning to show the first signs of uncertainty as Elena's performance exceeded anything he had witnessed during years of conducting qualification exercises. Elena's performance at 1,200 meters was equally flawless, compensating for increased wind effects and atmospheric distortion with calculations and adjustments that demonstrated mastery of advanced ballistics under field conditions. Her shooting rhythm remained consistent, each shot preceded by minimal preparation and followed by immediate assessment of environmental changes that might affect subsequent rounds. At 1,600 meters, where most candidates had experienced significant accuracy degradation, Elena's shots continued impacting with precision that suggested capabilities far beyond standard military marksmanship training. Her equipment modifications were proving their value as specialized systems performed exactly as designed for extreme-range precision shooting. Colonel Hartwell's skepticism had transformed into obvious bewilderment as Elena approached the final qualification distance. 2,000 meters represented the absolute limit of the qualification course, a range where atmospheric effects, equipment limitations, and human factors combined to create shooting challenges that few personnel could overcome consistently. Master Sergeant Hayes, Hartwell said quietly, his voice carrying uncertainty that contradicted his usual absolute confidence. Verify that Sergeant Rodriguez's equipment hasn't been modified beyond regulation specifications. Performance of this caliber suggests capabilities that shouldn't be possible with standard military systems. Elena's preparation for the 2,000-meter shots required additional time for environmental assessment and ballistic calculations that accounted for the complex factors affecting bullet flight over such extreme distances. Her breathing slowed even further as she compensated for crosswinds that varied at different altitudes, atmospheric pressure changes that affected powder combustion, and the barely perceptible movement of the target from thermal effects. Her first shot at maximum range struck the target's scoring area with impact precision that created immediate silence among the assembled observers. The second shot followed with equal accuracy, then the third, fourth, and fifth, each round precisely placed despite conditions that had made accurate shooting impossible for every other candidate. As Elena completed her qualification sequence and cleared her rifle, the range fell into stunned silence. Her shooting performance had achieved perfect scores at all distances under environmental conditions that had challenged the capabilities of every other participant, including several with extensive combat experience and advanced training credentials. Master Sergeant Hayes approached Elena's position with obvious amazement, carrying the electronic scoring tablet that displayed performance data that contradicted everything she understood about precision shooting capabilities under adverse conditions. Sergeant Rodriguez, your qualification scores are unprecedented. Perfect accuracy at all ranges despite environmental conditions that should have made such performance impossible. Where did you learn to shoot at this level? Elena's carefully constructed cover identity was collapsing under the pressure of demonstrated capability that couldn't be explained through standard military training or routine marksmanship experience. Advanced training, Master Sergeant. Specialized programs that required precision shooting under challenging conditions. Colonel Hartwell approached with obvious confusion and growing suspicion, his authority challenged by performance that exceeded his own capabilities and contradicted his understanding of precision shooting limitations. Sergeant, I need to see your complete training records and qualification history. Shooting of this caliber requires explanation and verification through proper channels. Before Elena could respond, a black SUV with government license plates approached the range facility, and Captain Webb moved quickly from the observation deck to meet the arriving officials. 3 individuals in civilian clothes emerged from the vehicle. 2 carried briefcases marked with security classifications, and the third displayed credentials that immediately commanded attention from all senior personnel present. Colonel Hartwell, the lead official announced, approaching with formal authority that suggested federal oversight rather than routine military administration. I'm Director Morrison from Defense Intelligence Agency. We need to speak with you immediately regarding Master Sergeant Rodriguez and certain classified aspects of her background that require immediate clarification. Hartwell's confusion deepened as he realized that Elena's presence at the training facility was connected to intelligence matters far beyond routine military training programs. Sir, I don't understand. Sergeant Rodriguez is enrolled in our standard advanced marksmanship program. Her personnel records indicate logistics support background with basic shooting qualifications. Director Morrison opened one of the classified briefcases and distributed sealed folders to Colonel Hartwell and Master Sergeant Hayes. Those records represent cover documentation for security purposes. Master Sergeant Rodriguez's actual background is classified at levels that require special authorization for disclosure. As the senior personnel opened their folders and began reviewing the contents, their expressions shifted from confusion to amazement to something approaching disbelief. Elena's actual service record revealed assignments and qualifications that had been hidden beneath carefully constructed administrative cover stories. Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, Director Morrison announced to the small group of senior personnel who had been cleared for the classified briefing, currently holds the record for longest confirmed combat kill in military history. She served 3 tours with classified special operations units, completing missions that remain classified at the highest levels of government. He continued as the implications of Elena's actual background became clear to the assembled leadership. 2 years ago, Master Sergeant Rodriguez was assigned to deep cover operations that required her to assume administrative support roles while maintaining her specialized capabilities for potential activation when national security situations required her unique skills. Colonel Hartwell stared at Elena with growing recognition of the professional caliber he had been unknowingly evaluating. Sir, if her qualifications are at this level, why was she enrolled in our basic training program? Because, Colonel, this isn't a training program for Master Sergeant Rodriguez. This is an evaluation of your facility's capabilities and training standards. She's here to assess whether your program produces personnel capable of meeting current operational requirements. Director Morrison turned to address Elena directly. Master Sergeant, your assessment of this facility and its training standards? Elena's response was measured and professional, demonstrating the analytical approach that had characterized her evaluation of the training program from the beginning. The facilities and equipment are excellent, sir. The fundamental training methodology is sound. However, the standards appear to be based on limitations rather than potential. Many candidates are being eliminated who could achieve much higher performance with proper instruction and realistic expectations. She paused, then continued with obvious respect for the personnel involved. Colonel Hartwell's expertise is genuine, but his approach assumes that exceptional performance is impossible rather than simply uncommon. With modified training techniques, this facility could produce precision shooters at levels that exceed current assumptions. Director Morrison nodded approvingly. That assessment matches intelligence requirements for expanded special operations capabilities. Colonel Hartwell, you're being offered the opportunity to redesign your program based on Master Sergeant Rodriguez's recommendations and direct instruction. Hartwell absorbed this information with the stunned recognition of someone whose understanding of precision shooting had been fundamentally challenged and expanded in the course of a single afternoon. Sir, I would be honored to learn from Master Sergeant Rodriguez's experience and expertise. Elena stepped forward with the professional bearing that had been hidden beneath her administrative cover identity. Colonel, there's nothing wrong with your training methods, but we can achieve much more by raising expectations and providing students with techniques that most people assume are impossible. 3 hours later, the training facility's main briefing room was filled with the 30 sniper candidates who had witnessed Elena's unprecedented qualification performance. Director Morrison had departed after ensuring that proper security protocols were established for Elena's actual assignment, leaving Colonel Hartwell and Master Sergeant Hayes to process the implications of hosting one of the military's most classified precision shooting specialists. Elena stood at the front of the briefing room, no longer concealing her expertise behind administrative pretense. The transformation from quiet logistics coordinator to acknowledged subject matter expert was complete, and her presence commanded immediate attention from personnel who now understood they were receiving instruction from someone whose capabilities exceeded anything they had previously encountered. Precision shooting isn't about equipment or natural talent, Elena began, her voice carrying the authority of someone whose qualifications had been proven under the most demanding conditions possible. It's about understanding the relationship between environment, equipment, and human factors, then developing techniques that account for all variables simultaneously. She gestured toward the range where her qualification exercise had demonstrated capabilities that seemed to defy physical limitations. Everything you witness today can be learned and replicated through proper training and realistic expectations. The techniques I used are based on physics and mathematics, not magic or exceptional gifts. Staff Sergeant Torres, who had observed Elena's transformation from the beginning, raised his hand with obvious curiosity. Master Sergeant, when you were assigned to this facility, did you know you would be conducting this evaluation? Elena's response provided insight into the complex requirements of classified operations that often required personnel to maintain cover identities while prepared for immediate activation when circumstances required their specialized capabilities. My assignment was to evaluate training effectiveness while maintaining cover identity as a routine student. The qualification demonstration wasn't planned. It became necessary when Colonel Hartwell's assessment standards needed to be recalibrated based on realistic capability expectations. Another candidate asked, the shooting techniques you demonstrated, are they classified, or can they be taught to conventional military personnel? Everything I demonstrated today will become part of your standard instruction, Elena replied. Precision shooting at extended ranges requires understanding of ballistics, environmental factors, and equipment capabilities that most training programs don't address adequately. There's nothing classified about physics and mathematics. Colonel Hartwell joined Elena at the front of the briefing room, his authority now shared with someone whose expertise clearly exceeded his own training and experience. Master Sergeant Rodriguez will be restructuring our entire program based on her operational experience and technical knowledge. Everyone who qualifies for continued training will receive instruction in techniques that exceed current military standards. After the briefing concluded and candidates dispersed to process the implications of their expanded training opportunities, Elena walked alone to the memorial wall that honored precision shooters who had lost their lives in classified operations. 7 bronze plaques displayed names, ranks, and dates of death for personnel whose sacrifices remained hidden from public recognition. It had become her ritual during previous visits to classified facilities, a moment of recognition for colleagues whose contributions to national security would never receive appropriate acknowledgement. As she completed her tribute, Colonel Hartwell approached with obvious respect for protocols he was learning to understand. Master Sergeant, he began, his voice carrying genuine humility rather than the absolute authority that had characterized his previous interactions. I owe you an apology for my initial assessment and treatment. I failed to recognize expertise that should have been obvious to someone with my experience. Elena turned to face him, her expression showing understanding rather than criticism. Colonel, operational security required that my background remain concealed. Your training methods are effective. They just need to account for higher potential than conventional assumptions suggest. How do we move forward from here? Hartwell asked. How do I redesign a program that's been based on limitations I now realize were artificial? Elena gestured toward the training facility where candidates were preparing for instruction that would exceed anything they had previously experienced. We start by raising expectations. We teach techniques that most people assume are impossible. We show students that precision shooting is limited by understanding, not by human capability. She paused, then continued with the quiet confidence that had characterized her throughout the evaluation process. The qualification scores you witnessed today represent baseline capability, not exceptional performance. With proper instruction, every candidate in that room can achieve similar results. Hartwell absorbed this information with growing understanding of the transformation that his program was about to undergo. Master Sergeant, what do you need from me to make this happen? Support for training methods that will seem unconventional until students see the results. Willingness to accept that precision shooting capabilities exceed current assumptions. And patience while we prove that exceptional performance is achievable through proper instruction rather than natural talent. 1 year later, Fort Carson's Advanced Marksmanship Training Center had been redesigned as the Special Operations Precision Shooting School, producing graduates whose capabilities exceeded previous military standards and who were in demand across all special operations units. Elena's training methods had revolutionized understanding of precision shooting while maintaining the security requirements that kept her most classified techniques from unauthorized disclosure. The qualification course that had once eliminated most candidates now served as a baseline assessment, with advanced students routinely achieving accuracy that would have been considered impossible under the previous program structure. The steel targets that had once represented ultimate challenges were now intermediate training objectives for students who learned to expect exceptional performance from themselves. On this particular morning, Master Sergeant Rodriguez stood before her newest class of precision shooting candidates, the morning sun illuminating a facility that had become the military's premier training center for advanced marksmanship capabilities. Precision isn't about natural gifts or exceptional equipment, she explained, pacing slowly before the assembled students. It's about understanding variables, developing consistent techniques, and maintaining realistic expectations about what's achievable through proper preparation and practice. She gestured toward the range where students were preparing for qualification exercises that would have been considered impossible just 1 year earlier. Today, each of you will attempt shots at ranges that were once considered beyond human capability. Most of you will succeed on your first attempt because the techniques you've learned account for all the factors that make precision shooting possible. Colonel Hartwell, now serving as her executive officer, joined her at the front of the group. Master Sergeant Rodriguez has transformed not just our training methods, but our understanding of what's achievable through proper instruction and realistic expectations. The capabilities you'll develop here exceed anything available at other military training facilities. After dismissing the morning briefing, Elena walked to the memorial garden that had been expanded to honor all precision shooters who had served in classified operations. The original 7 plaques had been joined by additional memorials recognizing personnel whose sacrifices had contributed to national security through specialized capabilities that remained largely unknown to the public. As she completed her daily tribute to fallen colleagues, she became aware of someone waiting at a respectful distance. A young corporal stood at attention, clearly nervous about approaching the facility's commanding officer, but determined to ask a question that had been troubling him. Master Sergeant Rodriguez. The corporal began. Permission to ask a question, ma'am? Elena nodded once. Granted. Is it true what they say, that you made confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 3,000 meters during classified operations? Elena studied the eager face before her, recognizing the same hunger for excellence that drove all precision shooters, the same desire to understand the absolute limits of human capability when properly developed and applied. Distance is just one variable, she corrected. The important factors are understanding your environment, preparing your equipment, and developing techniques that account for all the conditions that affect bullet flight. What was going through your mind during those operations? Elena looked toward the memorial plaques that honored personnel whose sacrifices had made her survival and success possible. I wasn't thinking about records or recognition. I was thinking about completing missions that protected people who would never know their lives had been saved by precision shooting from impossible ranges. She turned back to the corporal. The distances don't matter. What matters is developing capabilities that serve the mission and protect personnel who depend on precision shooting for their survival and success. The corporal nodded seriously, understanding that he was receiving instruction that went beyond technical knowledge to encompass the deeper purposes that justified the extraordinary demands of precision shooting under combat conditions. Now, Elena said with a slight smile, if you want to understand how those techniques actually work, report to the Advanced Ballistics course at 1,400 hours. Colonel Hartwell and I will be conducting practical exercises for anyone willing to expand their understanding beyond conventional limitations. As the corporal hurried away, Elena remained by the memorial garden, watching as the morning sun illuminated a training facility where students routinely achieved capabilities that had once been considered impossible. In the distance, she could see precision shooters preparing for qualification exercises that would establish new standards for military marksmanship excellence. She placed her hand briefly on the central memorial plaque, honoring personnel whose sacrifice had made her current mission possible. We're making it count, she said quietly. just like you would have wanted. Then she turned and walked back toward the training facility, ready to continue the work of transforming assumptions into achievements, of proving that exceptional performance was limited only by understanding and preparation rather than human capability. The wind picked up slightly as she walked, and without conscious thought, she noted its direction and velocity for the ballistic calculations that had become second nature after years of precision shooting under every conceivable condition. For the first time in her career, the satisfaction of passing exceptional capabilities to the next generation felt more rewarding than any personal achievement. Excellence had found its proper expression through teaching and development rather than individual performance. The impossible standards had become routine expectations, and somewhere, she believed, precision shooters serving in classified operations were better prepared because of training that exceeded all previous limitations.